Most people never question the way they think about money. They question their boss, they question their schedule, they question the economy, inflation, opportunities, timing. But rarely do they question the structure that quietly governs their entire financial life. For a long time, I didn't question it either. I believed that success meant earning more every year. A higher salary meant I was growing. A promotion meant I was winning. A larger paycheck meant I was secure, and I tracked my progress in percentages and performance reviews. On paper, everything looked responsible, stable, mature. But beneath that steady climb, there was a quiet truth I tried to ignore. If I stopped working, the income stopped too. I remember the moment that realization became real. A close friend of mine lost his job during a sudden corporate restructuring. He had done everything right: degrees, late nights, consistent performance, loyalty to the company. Because he wasn't reckless or unprepared. He was competent and disciplined, and yet, within weeks, the anxiety started to show. Not because he lacked talent, not because he couldn't find another job, but because his entire life was built on one stream of income that depended completely on his daily presence. When that stream paused, everything else felt fragile. Plans were delayed. Confidence shook. Sleep became lighter. At the same time, another friend of mine was living a very different story. She didn't have the highest salary in our circle. She didn't carry the most impressive job title. But quietly, over the years, she had been building small systems in the background of her life. A digital product created from her expertise. A structured consulting offer that ran with automation. A modest rental investment generating steady cash flow. Nothing dramatic, nothing viral. Just intentional construction. When she stepped away for a month, her income didn't disappear. So that contrast changed me. It forced me to confront an uncomfortable question. Was I building freedom, or was I simply upgrading the comfort of my dependency? There's nothing wrong with earning a salary. It feeds families. It creates stability. It opens doors. But when it becomes your only foundation, it also becomes a single point of failure. It ties your survival directly to your time. It makes your energy the only engine driving your income. Systems change that relationship. And a system is something you build once and refine over time. It is income engineered to continue beyond your immediate effort. It is leverage. It is ownership. It is structure that compounds quietly while you sleep, rest, or choose to slow down. This is not about quitting your job tomorrow. It is not about unrealistic promises or overnight wealth. It is about shifting how you think, moving from earning to engineering, from trading hours to building assets, and from short-term stability to long-term design. If you have ever felt that quiet tension inside you, the feeling that your hard work should create something lasting, something that protects you instead of depending on you, then this conversation is for you. And if you know someone right now who feels stuck in the paycheck cycle, someone who works hard but needs a new perspective to improve their life, share this video with them. It might be exactly what they need to begin building a more secure and intentional future. Chapter 1. The Invisible Ceiling of Salary. Thinking. There is a ceiling most people never see. It is not written into your contract. It is not announced during performance reviews. It does not appear in your bank account balance. But it exists. It is the invisible ceiling created by salary thinking. Salary thinking is not just about earning money. It is a mental framework. It trains you to focus on compensation instead of control, on negotiation instead of creation, and on short-term upgrades instead of long-term design. And because it feels normal, it feels safe. Let me tell you a small story. A former colleague of mine, Daniel, was one of the most competent people in our department. Highly analytical, efficient, reliable. Every year, he negotiated raises successfully. He knew his market value and made sure he was paid accordingly. By most standards, he was doing everything right. One afternoon during lunch, we were discussing career growth. Daniel said something that stuck with me. As long as I keep increasing my salary, I'm good. That's the game. At the time, I nodded, But years later, I realized that sentence revealed everything. He believed the game was about increasing income within a structure someone else controlled, and that belief shaped every decision he made. He optimized for performance reviews. He optimized for visibility within management. He optimized for titles that justified higher pay. Now, what he never optimized for was ownership. One year, our company launched a new internal system to improve workflow efficiency. Most employees treated it as just another software update. Daniel learned it thoroughly because it helped him perform better. Another coworker, Maya, approached it differently. Instead of just learning how to use the system, she studied how it worked. She noticed inefficiencies in how teams implemented it. She documented solutions, and she built simplified guides for other departments. Eventually, she proposed a company-wide training framework based on her documentation. Her initiative turned into a consulting opportunity beyond our company. Same environment, same tool, completely different thinking. Daniel used the system to improve his salary trajectory. Maya used the system to create leverage. This is the invisible ceiling of salary thinking. Hence, it trains you to ask, how do I perform better? Instead of, how do I build something reusable? The first question improves your value within a job. The second question creates value beyond the job. Here is the deeper issue. When you think primarily in salaries, your growth is tied to external approval. Raises depend on budgets. Promotions depend on politics. Bonuses depend on market conditions. Even when you excel, you are still operating inside someone else's structure. And that structure always has limits. Think about how most people react when they want to earn more. They update their resume. They apply for higher paying positions. They negotiate harder. All valid actions. But notice the pattern. They are still selling time. Higher price per hour does not eliminate dependency on hours. This is where the ceiling becomes invisible. Because as your salary grows, your lifestyle grows with it. Better apartment, better car, better vacations. No more financial commitments. Without realizing it, your financial obligations expand at the same pace as your income. The margin of safety does not widen. It simply shifts upward. I once worked with a senior manager who earned nearly 3 times my salary at the time. From the outside, his life looked aspirational. Large home, luxury car, prestigious role. One evening after a long meeting, we stayed behind talking. He admitted something surprising. If this job disappears, then my entire structure collapses. His expenses were engineered around his income level, not around financial independence. His freedom had not increased with his salary. His pressure had. This is the paradox. Salary growth often increases complexity faster than it increases security. The invisible ceiling is not about how much you earn. It is about how you think. Salary thinking focuses on performance, promotion, compensation. System thinking focuses on replication, ownership, durability. Nothing. Salary thinking says, how can I make more this year? System thinking asks, what can I build that continues next year without starting over? There is another subtle effect of salary thinking. It narrows creativity. When your primary goal is to climb within a hierarchy, you subconsciously filter your ideas. You avoid risks that do not align with your employer's path. You delay personal projects because they do not immediately translate into career advancement, so your imagination becomes confined to what is rewarded inside the system. Years ago, I had an idea for a small digital resource based on a process I used at work. It solved a common problem in our industry. I drafted it halfway, then stopped. Why? Because it did not contribute to my next promotion. That single mindset delayed action for almost a year. When I finally finished and released it, the response surprised me. It generated modest but consistent income. More importantly, it required no additional hours once built. That experience exposed something critical. Value does not only exist inside your job description. Salary thinking conditions you to believe that your worth is validated by a company title. System thinking reminds you that your skills can exist independently of any organization. The invisible ceiling begins to crack the moment you separate your identity from your paycheck. You are not your salary band. You are not your annual review. You are not your job title. Those are temporary containers. The danger is not earning a salary. The danger is believing it is the only path available to you. And once you see that ceiling, you cannot unsee it. You begin to notice opportunities differently. You start observing inefficiencies around you. You pay attention to recurring problems people complain about. You recognize skills you use daily that could be packaged, automated, or scaled. That shift in awareness is where everything changes. Because the ceiling was never financial, it was psychological. And in the moment you step outside of salary thinking, even slightly, you begin to realize something powerful. You are never limited by income. You are limited by architecture. And architecture can be redesigned. Chapter 2. Learning to see. Leverage everywhere. Once you recognize the invisible ceiling of salary thinking, something subtle begins to change. You start noticing patterns. You start asking different questions. And most importantly, you begin to see leverage where you once only saw labor. Leverage is one of the most misunderstood concepts in modern work culture. Many people associate it with money, investing capital to make more capital. But leverage is much broader than that. So it is the ability to multiply impact without multiplying effort at the same rate. In simple terms, leverage means doing something once and benefiting from it multiple times. Most people are trained to increase effort when they want better results. Work longer hours, take on more responsibilities, add more clients, push harder. But effort has a limit. There are only 24 hours in a day. Energy fluctuates, focus declines. Burnout becomes real. Leverage removes the direct relationship between hours and results. A friend of mine named Kevin learned this lesson in an unexpected way. He worked as a fitness coach. For years, his income depended entirely on one-on-one sessions. If he trained 10 clients, he earned 10 session fees. If he trained 20, he earned 20. His schedule was packed, and his income looked decent, but he was exhausted. One evening, after canceling a session due to illness, he realized something uncomfortable. When he couldn't show up physically, his income instantly dropped to zero. Instead of adding more clients, Kevin tried something different. He began recording short instructional videos for common exercises his clients struggled with. At first, it was just to save time explaining the same techniques repeatedly. Then he organized those videos into a structured beginner program. Eventually, he packaged it into a simple online course. The first month, it earned very little, but it required no additional time once completed. Over the next year, that small digital product quietly grew. It didn't replace his coaching immediately, but it reduced his dependency on constant physical presence. Kevin did not become successful because he worked harder. He became more stable because he created leverage. The shift from labor to leverage often begins with a simple observation. What am I repeating? Repetition is a clue. As if you're answering the same questions, solving the same problems, or performing the same tasks again and again, there is an opportunity to build something reusable. Most professionals ignore this because repetition feels normal. It is part of the job. But repetition is also a signal. It points to processes that can be documented, automated, or packaged. Leverage does not always require technology. Sometimes it begins with documentation. Consider a teacher who designs lesson plans from scratch every year. That approach consumes enormous energy. But if those lesson plans are structured, refined, and standardized, they can be reused, adapted, or even licensed. The same principle applies in almost every field. If you're in sales, you can build a repeatable follow-up system instead of improvising each conversation. If you're a designer, you can create template libraries instead of reinventing layouts. And if you work in corporate management, you can develop standardized onboarding frameworks instead of training each employee from zero. Leverage lives inside systems. I once observed two project managers working under similar conditions. One handled every problem personally. He answered every email, resolved every issue, and intervened in every delay. He was seen as indispensable, but he was also constantly overwhelmed. The other project manager did something different. Instead of reacting to every problem, she analyzed why those problems occurred repeatedly. She built checklists. She clarified communication flows. She created shared dashboards that updated automatically. Within months, the volume of emergencies decreased significantly. Her workload did not shrink because she worked harder. It shrank because she designed better. The interesting part: senior leadership began noticing her strategic thinking. She wasn't just solving issues. She was preventing them. Leverage changes how others perceive your value. When your contribution multiplies results beyond your personal output, your role evolves. You're no longer simply a worker. You become an architect. There is another layer to this. Leverage compounds. The first system you build may feel small. It may not generate significant income immediately. It may not attract much attention, but each system builds skill. As each process you design improves your ability to think structurally, each asset you create reduces dependency slightly. Over time, small reductions in dependency accumulate into meaningful flexibility. Many people avoid building leverage because the rewards are delayed. Salary increases are visible and immediate. Leverage grows quietly. But quiet growth is often more durable. Imagine planting a tree. In the first months, nothing dramatic happens. There is no shade, no fruit, just soil and patience. But once the roots deepen, growth accelerates. Eventually, the tree provides value without daily effort. Leverage works the same way. It requires upfront effort with delayed return. That is why most people never build it. They are conditioned to seek immediate compensation for effort. But leverage demands that you separate effort from immediate reward. It asks you to trust structure. If you look carefully at highly independent individuals, you will notice a pattern. They build things that outlast their daily energy. They design frameworks that reduce friction. They create assets that operate beyond their immediate involvement. They do not rely solely on personal stamina. Now, they rely on systems. You do not need to abandon your current role to begin seeing leverage. Start by observing your daily work through a different lens. Ask yourself where repetition exists, where inefficiencies hide, where knowledge can be documented, where solutions can be standardized. The moment you begin looking for leverage, you will start seeing it everywhere. And once you learn to see leverage, you can never return to thinking in pure labor again. Chapter 3. From time. Ownership to value ownership. There is a difference between owning your time and owning your value. Most people spend years trying to gain more control over their schedule. Flexible hours, remote work, a 4-day week. These are meaningful improvements. They create breathing room, but they do not automatically create independence. Because you can control your time and still not own your value. Time ownership means you decide when you work. Their value ownership means you decide how your work continues to generate returns. The distinction is subtle, but powerful. I once met a freelance graphic designer named Lucas. He left his corporate job to be his own boss. At first glance, it looked like he had escaped the traditional structure. No manager, no office politics, flexible schedule. He chose his clients. But after 6 months, he admitted something surprising. Quote, I just replaced one boss with 10 clients. His income still depended entirely on delivering custom work. Every project required fresh effort. Every invoice required new hours. If he wanted to earn more, he had to take on more projects. When he took a break, revenue slowed immediately. Lucas owned his schedule, but he did not yet own his value. That realization shifted his approach. Instead of only accepting custom branding work, he began analyzing common patterns among his clients. Many startups struggled with the same basic design needs: pitch decks, social media templates, simple brand kits. Rather than building everything from scratch each time, Lucas created standardized design bundles. He refined them, polished them, turned them into downloadable packages that could be customized with minimal adjustments. At first, the results were modest, but something fundamental changed. His expertise was no longer locked inside hourly contracts. It became an asset. He moved from selling time to packaging value. This shift is one of the most important transitions in building systems. When you sell time, you are paid for presence. When you own value, you are paid for results that can exist independently of you. Many professionals struggle here because traditional education trains us to improve performance, not extract value. We are taught to become better at doing the work. Rarely are we taught to transform that work into something scalable. Think about how many people accumulate years of experience in a field, but never convert that experience into an asset. They hold knowledge, insights, and frameworks entirely in their heads. Valuable, but trapped. Value ownership begins when you externalize what you know. Write it down, structure it, record it, package it, organize it. When knowledge remains internal, it cannot multiply. There was a software engineer I once collaborated with named Priya. She was incredibly efficient. She could debug complex systems faster than anyone on the team. When problems arose, everyone turned to her. But she noticed something troubling. She was becoming the bottleneck. Instead of enjoying her expertise, she felt burdened by it. So she did something counterintuitive. She began documenting every troubleshooting process in detail. She created internal guides, built diagnostic flowcharts, recorded short walkthrough videos. Within months, junior engineers could solve issues that previously required her direct involvement. At first, she feared becoming replaceable. The opposite happened. Leadership saw that she wasn't just solving problems. She was increasing the entire team's capability. Her role evolved from problem solver to systems strategist. By documenting her knowledge, she didn't diminish her value. She multiplied it. Value ownership is not about hoarding expertise. It is about structuring it so that it continues working beyond the moment you apply it. There is also a psychological shift involved. When you focus solely on time ownership, you think in terms of freedom from obligation. When you focus on value ownership, you think in terms of freedom through creation. The difference is profound. Escaping obligations can feel temporary. Creating assets feels permanent. Consider authors. A writer may spend months crafting a book. During that period, his income may be limited. But once published, that intellectual property exists independently. It can be sold repeatedly, licensed, translated, adapted. The effort was concentrated. The returns can extend. This principle applies in far more areas than we realize. If you are a consultant, you can transform your methods into a repeatable framework. If you are a teacher, you can create structured learning programs instead of one-off sessions. If you are in operations, so you can design process blueprints others can implement. The key question shifts from how do I get paid for this hour to how do I turn this into something reusable? There is a quiet power in that question, because once you begin building reusable value, your relationship with work changes. You stop viewing tasks as isolated efforts. You start seeing them as building blocks. Each project becomes an opportunity to refine a system. Each solution becomes a potential template. Each insight becomes potential intellectual property. The goal is not to eliminate work. The goal is to ensure your work accumulates. Salary thinking often resets progress every month. You earn, you spend, you repeat. But value ownership builds layers. What you create today can still serve you next year, and over time, those layers compound. Lucas did not stop freelancing immediately, but as his design bundles grew in popularity, his dependency on custom projects decreased. Eventually, he became selective about clients. Not because he worked less, but because he had alternatives. Alternatives create power. When your value exists independently of your daily hours, you gain negotiating strength. You gain strategic flexibility. You gain emotional stability. You no longer feel that every decision must be optimized for immediate income. You begin to think long-term. Value ownership transforms your skills from temporary services into durable assets. And once you understand that your expertise can be structured, stored, and scaled, you stop seeing yourself as a worker for hire. You start seeing yourself as a builder of value. That shift changes everything. Chapter 4. The architecture of your first system ideas are exciting. Insight feels powerful. But freedom is not built on ideas alone. It is built on structure. At some point, you have to move from understanding the concept of systems to actually constructing one. And this is where many people hesitate. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack skill, but because building a system feels intimidating. It sounds complex, technical, risky. In reality, your first system does not need to be impressive. It needs to be functional. I once met a woman named Hannah who worked full-time in human resources. She wasn't trying to become an entrepreneur. She wasn't dreaming of quitting her job. She simply noticed something. Every week, friends and acquaintances asked her for resume advice. She would sit down with them, review their documents, rewrite sections, suggest improvements. She enjoyed helping, but it was time-consuming. One evening, after finishing yet another unpaid review, she said something simple. "I keep answering the same questions." That sentence is where systems begin. Instead of scheduling another one-on-one session, Hannah started documenting her advice. She created a structured checklist for resume writing. Then she recorded a short video explaining the most common mistakes she saw. Then she built a basic template people could download. At first, it was just a personal resource she could send to friends. And then someone suggested she charge for it. Her first month, she made less than $200. Not life-changing. But something more important happened. She built infrastructure. She no longer needed to trade an hour of her time for every person she helped. The system did the initial work. If someone needed deeper customization, she could offer premium services on top. Hannah didn't invent a new industry. She simply structured what she already knew. Well, that is the architecture of a first system. It begins with 3 components: a problem, a repeatable solution, a delivery mechanism. The problem must be real and specific. Vague problems do not convert into systems. People want to be successful is too broad. Mid-level professionals struggle to write achievement-focused resumes is actionable. The solution must be structured. If you cannot explain your process clearly, you cannot build a system around it. Clarity is the foundation of scale. The delivery mechanism determines how the solution reaches others. It could be digital downloads, automated emails, a subscription model, a licensing agreement, a simple website. The format matters less than the repeatability. Many people stall because they overcomplicate this phase. They think they need perfect branding, advanced technology, large audiences. You do not. You need usefulness. There is another story that illustrates this. A software developer named Miguel worked in cybersecurity, and in his company, he was known for simplifying technical concepts for non-technical executives. Instead of overwhelming them with jargon, he used analogies and visual diagrams. After a conference presentation where his explanation received strong feedback, someone asked if he offered training. He didn't, but he could have. Miguel spent a few weekends organizing his presentation into a structured workshop. He built slides, worksheets, and case studies. But instead of offering custom consulting every time, he created a standardized training package. Companies could book the program as a complete solution. Over time, that workshop evolved into a licensed program delivered by other trainers. Miguel's breakthrough was not discovering new knowledge. It was packaging existing expertise into a transferable structure. That is architecture. Systems are not built from inspiration. They are built from organization. Think of it like constructing a building. That you do not start with decoration. You start with a blueprint. Your blueprint answers simple but powerful questions. What outcome am I helping someone achieve? What steps consistently produce that outcome? How can those steps be documented or automated? Write those answers down, then refine them. Your first version will not be perfect. It does not need to be. Perfection is a delay tactic disguised as quality control. Execution creates clarity. When Hannah launched her resume toolkit, she quickly discovered gaps. Certain sections needed clearer examples. Some videos were too long. The pricing needed adjustment. But those refinements were possible only because she launched something. You cannot improve a system that does not exist. There is also a psychological barrier to building your first system: fear of visibility. When you package your knowledge, you expose your thinking to critique. But critique is feedback. Feedback sharpens architecture. The real risk is staying invisible. Another important principle: start narrow. Broad systems are fragile. Specific systems are strong. If you try to build something for everyone, you build something for no one. But if you solve a clearly defined problem for a clearly defined group, you create relevance. Relevance builds traction. Traction builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence fuels expansion. Your first system does not need to replace your salary. That is not the objective. The objective is to create proof. Proof that you can design something independent of direct supervision. Proof that your knowledge can generate value beyond your immediate effort. Once you experience even modest success from a structured system, your mindset shifts permanently. You stop seeing your skills as static abilities. You start seeing them as raw materials that can be shaped, assembled, and distributed. Architecture transforms potential into structure, and structure transforms effort into durability. Your first system is not about income alone. It is about identity. It is the moment you move from being solely a participant in someone else's design to becoming a designer of your own. And once you build that first structure, no matter how small, you realize something powerful. You're capable of building more. Chapter 5. The discipline of consistency. When no one is watching, building a system is exciting in the beginning. There's energy in planning, outlining, imagining what could happen. But after the initial momentum fades, something far more important takes over. Discipline. Not the loud motivational kind. Not the dramatic wake up at 4 a.m. version people post online. I'm talking about quiet discipline. The kind that shows up when no one is applauding, and the kind that keeps moving even when results are invisible. Systems are not built in bursts of inspiration. They are built in stretches of consistency. A friend of mine named Aaron learned this the hard way. He worked in finance and wanted to create a small investment education platform on the side. He had strong knowledge and clear ideas. The first month, he was energized. He designed a logo, mapped out content, even announced his project to friends. Then something happened. Engagement was low. His sales were slow. Feedback was minimal. His excitement faded. One night he called me, frustrated. "Maybe it's just not meant to work," he said. "If it were good, it would take off faster." But that statement revealed a hidden expectation. He expected immediate validation. Salary-based work conditions us to expect predictable feedback. You show up, you complete tasks, you get paid. The cycle is tight and visible. But systems operate on delayed reinforcement. You work today, you refine tomorrow. The results accumulate quietly. Aaron decided to adjust his mindset. Instead of measuring success by revenue, he measured consistency. His new rule was simple. Publish one high-quality piece of content every week, no matter what. No exceptions. No emotional negotiations. Week after week, he followed the rule. Some weeks were discouraging, others felt promising, but the rhythm remained. After 6 months, something shifted. His audience began growing steadily. After a year, he had built a small but loyal community. Sponsors reached out. A digital course began selling organically. The turning point was not a viral moment. It was sustained discipline. Consistency builds credibility, not just with an audience, but with yourself. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you reinforce an identity. I am someone who builds. Without discipline, systems collapse under emotional pressure. There will be days when you doubt your idea. Days when you question your abilities. Days when progress feels invisible. Discipline bridges the gap between vision and outcome. There is also a practical dimension to this. Systems compound through iteration. Iteration requires time. If you abandon your effort after 3 weeks, you never gather enough data to refine. You never learn what works and what doesn't. You never give your structure a chance to mature. Imagine planting seeds and digging them up every week to check if they are growing. And you would destroy the process before it has a chance to take root. Consistency is patience in action. Another example comes from someone I met at a networking event. Her name was Claire, and she worked as a language tutor. She wanted to create an online membership platform for advanced learners. Her first attempt was messy. The website was basic. The content felt uneven, but she committed to improving one element each week. Week 1, better lesson structure. Week 2, clearer onboarding. As week 3, interactive exercises. Week 4, automated billing. None of these improvements were dramatic individually, but together, over 12 months, they transformed her small platform into a polished ecosystem. When people complimented her success, they assumed it was sudden. It wasn't. It was accumulated refinement. There is a mental trap that often appears during this phase. You begin comparing your early progress to someone else's established system. You see polished websites, names large audiences, automated workflows that look effortless. What you do not see are the years of invisible work behind them. Comparison kills consistency. The only relevant comparison is between who you were last month and who you are today. Have you improved your process? Have you clarified your message? Have you strengthened your structure? If yes, you are progressing. Discipline also requires boundaries. If you treat your system-building time casually, it will disappear under urgent but less important demands. Protecting time is an act of seriousness. Schedule it, respect it, defend it, even if it is only one focused hour per day. Over a year, that hour becomes more than 300 hours of directed effort. That is enough to build something meaningful. Another subtle benefit of consistency is emotional resilience. The more you show up regardless of mood, the less power mood has over you. You stop waiting to feel ready. You act, and feelings follow. Systems reward stability. They do not respond well to bursts of intensity followed by long gaps of inactivity. And here is the truth many people avoid. Most system builders fail not because their idea is flawed, but because their discipline wavers. Talent helps, strategy matters, but consistency sustains. Aaron's platform did not make him wealthy overnight, but it gave him something more important: confidence that he could build independently of his job. That confidence influenced every decision he made afterward. Claire's membership site did not explode in popularity, but it provided steady, predictable revenue that reduced her financial anxiety. These outcomes were not products of luck. They were the result of quiet, repeated action. Discipline transforms fragile ideas into durable systems. It turns uncertainty into structure. And most importantly, it proves to you that you are capable of long-term creation. When no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when results are still forming. That is where systems are truly built. Chapter 6. Designing income that survives your absence. There is a powerful question that determines whether you are truly building a system or simply creating a more complex job. What happens when you disappear for 30 days? Not a weekend. Not a short vacation where you still check emails. I mean truly unavailable. No meetings. No responses. No supervision. Does income continue? Or does everything pause? This question reveals the strength of your design. Many people believe they have built a system when, in reality, they have only optimized their involvement. They work efficiently. They automate small tasks. They delegate minor responsibilities, but the structure still depends on their oversight. A real system survives your absence. I learned this lesson from a restaurant owner named Victor. He had built a popular local cafe over 15 years. It was successful, profitable, well known. He was proud of what he created. But there was one problem, and he was there every day. From opening to closing, Victor supervised operations personally. He knew every supplier, every recipe adjustment, every staff schedule. Customers loved him because he was present. Then he had a health scare. Nothing catastrophic, but serious enough that his doctor insisted he step away for at least a month. Victor reluctantly agreed. Within 2 weeks, chaos began. Orders were mismanaged. Staff were unsure about certain decisions, and vendors called him directly for approvals. Revenue dipped. The cafe had customers. It had employees. It had brand recognition. But it did not have independence. After he returned, Victor made a decision. Instead of continuing as the central operator, he would redesign the business to function without him. He documented everything: supplier agreements, inventory systems, hiring processes, training manuals, decision-making guidelines. So he promoted a general manager and gave clear authority boundaries. It took nearly a year to implement these changes. The next time Victor traveled for 3 weeks, the cafe ran smoothly. Sales remained steady. That was the moment he truly owned a system. Designing income that survives your absence requires detachment. You must stop being the hero of every situation. You must resist the temptation to fix every problem personally. You must allow the structure to carry weight. This is difficult because involvement feels valuable. When people rely on you directly, you feel important, needed, central. But centralization is fragility. Durable systems distribute responsibility. There is another story that illustrates this principle on a smaller scale. A marketing consultant named Layla had built a solid client base. She specialized in helping small businesses develop branding strategies. Her calendar was always full, but she noticed something troubling. If she stopped prospecting for new clients, her pipeline slowed quickly. Each project ended, and she had to actively seek the next one. Her income depended on continuous personal outreach. Instead of simply working harder, Layla redesigned her approach. She created a structured referral system. After completing a project, she implemented an automated follow-up sequence requesting testimonials and introductions. She partnered with complementary service providers who regularly referred clients to her in exchange for reciprocal visibility. She also built educational webinars that attracted leads consistently. Within a year, new inquiries arrived without constant manual outreach. Layla was still involved in delivering high-quality strategy sessions, but the flow of opportunity no longer depended entirely on her daily hustle. The system carried momentum, not survival. During absence is not about eliminating work. It is about eliminating dependency. To design income that endures, you must focus on 4 elements: clarity, documentation, delegation, automation. Clarity ensures that processes are defined precisely. If your method only exists in your mind, it cannot operate independently. Documentation translates clarity into instructions others can follow. Delegation distributes execution beyond yourself. Automation removes repetitive tasks from human attention entirely. You may not implement all 4 immediately, but the direction matters. One of the most overlooked aspects of system durability is decision-making rules. When everything requires your personal approval, absence creates paralysis. But when you define boundaries clearly, others can act confidently. For example, what discounts are allowed without approval? What customer issues require escalation? What budget limits exist? So these rules create autonomy within structure. In personal systems, the principle remains the same. If you build an online course, can students navigate it without contacting you daily? If you manage rental properties, do you have clear maintenance protocols and a property manager? If you run a consulting practice, do contracts and onboarding materials, guide clients automatically through initial stages. Designing for absence requires humility. You must accept that others can operate parts of the system differently than you would. Perfection must give way to functionality. The goal is not flawless replication. The goal is resilience. There is also an emotional shift involved. When income depends solely on your presence, you feel pressure to always be available. You hesitate to rest. You worry about missing opportunities. You remain in constant alert mode. When income continues without immediate involvement, a subtle calm emerges. You make decisions from strength rather than urgency. Victor no longer feared taking time off. Layla no longer panicked during slow weeks. Their systems did not eliminate effort, but they reduced vulnerability. Now, designing for absence forces you to think long-term. It compels you to build structures that can withstand unpredictability, illness, market shifts, personal change. The ultimate test of a system is not how well it performs when you are fully engaged. It is how well it performs when you step back. Because true freedom is not measured by how hard you can work. It is measured by how well your architecture holds when you are not there to support it. Chapter 7. Playing the long game. When others chase. Speed. There is a quiet advantage available to anyone willing to think in decades instead of quarters. Most people underestimate what can happen in 5 focused years and overestimate what can happen in 5 impulsive months. Salary-based environments condition us to think in short cycles. Monthly paychecks, quarterly reviews, annual raises. The feedback loop is immediate. You work, you get paid. You perform, you get evaluated. Systems operate on a different clock. They reward patience, refinement, and strategic positioning. I once had a conversation with a man named Robert at a small business conference. He ran a niche manufacturing company that produced highly specialized components for industrial equipment. Nothing glamorous. No social media buzz. No viral campaigns. When I asked him how he grew his company, he smiled and said something unexpected. I just stayed. That was his strategy. And while competitors jumped into trendy markets, pivoted rapidly, or chased quick growth, Robert focused on improving one narrow line of products year after year. He reinvested profits into better equipment, strengthened supplier relationships, built long-term contracts with clients. There were years when growth looked slow. Some competitors expanded faster in the short term. But over 15 years, something remarkable happened. His reliability became his brand. When economic conditions shifted, clients chose him because he was stable, predictable, consistent. He wasn't the fastest. He was the most durable. Playing the long game does not mean moving slowly. It means making decisions that remain intelligent 5 years from now. Short-term thinking prioritizes immediate validation. Long-term thinking prioritizes structural advantage. Consider how many people abandon projects just before they mature. A blog that gains traction after 12 months, and a small software tool that becomes profitable after iterative improvements. A niche product that finds loyal customers through steady refinement. Most systems fail not because they are flawed, but because they are abandoned prematurely. The long game demands emotional endurance. You must tolerate periods where progress feels invisible. You must resist the urge to pivot every time something new appears more exciting. There was a woman named Nadia who started a podcast focused on financial literacy for young professionals. The first year was discouraging. Downloads were low, sponsorship offers were non-existent. Friends questioned why she invested so much time into something with little visible return. But Nadia treated the podcast as infrastructure, not entertainment. She studied audio quality, improved storytelling, refined her messaging, networked strategically with guests who shared her audience. And by year 3, her show had become a respected voice in a specific niche. Opportunities expanded organically, speaking invitations, partnerships, digital products. Nothing about her growth was explosive. It was cumulative. That is the essence of the long game. You compound reputation, you compound skill, you compound relationships, you compound trust. Trust, in particular, is a powerful multiplier. When people trust your output consistently over time, they return, they recommend, they invest. And trust cannot be rushed. Short-term strategies often prioritize attention. Long-term strategies prioritize credibility. Attention fluctuates. Credibility compounds. There is also a financial component to long-term thinking. Systems often require upfront investment of time, energy, or capital before meaningful returns appear. This discourages many people. The reward is not immediate, but consider compound interest as a metaphor. In the early stages, growth appears insignificant. Name the curve is almost flat. Over time, acceleration becomes dramatic. The same principle applies to systems. If you build a small digital asset that generates modest monthly income and reinvest that income into improvements, you create upward momentum. If you consistently refine your processes, efficiency increases. If you nurture relationships patiently, opportunities expand. Each improvement may appear small in isolation. Together, they create acceleration. Playing the long game also protects you from emotional volatility. When your vision spans years, short-term setbacks feel less catastrophic. A slow month does not define you. A temporary dip does not derail you. Robert once told me that during an economic downturn, several competitors slashed prices aggressively to maintain sales. He resisted. Instead of racing to the bottom, he communicated value clearly and strengthened existing contracts. Some clients left temporarily. Many returned later, because reliability outlasted discounting. Long-term thinking requires confidence in your architecture. It requires clarity about your positioning. It requires commitment to refinement rather than reaction. Another advantage of the long game is identity formation. When you stay committed to a structured path over years, you evolve into someone different. You develop deeper expertise. You cultivate resilience. You become known for something specific. Identity builds leverage. When people associate your name with consistency and quality, opportunities find you. Chasing speed often sacrifices depth, and chasing trends often sacrifices focus. But focusing on one structured direction over time builds authority. This does not mean ignoring change. It means integrating change strategically rather than impulsively. Nadia adapted her podcast format gradually as she learned more about her audience. Robert adopted new technology when it aligned with his long-term vision. They were not rigid. They were anchored. Anchoring provides stability. The long game is not glamorous, and it does not produce dramatic overnight transformations. It produces something more powerful, structural advantage. And structural advantage compounds quietly until one day it appears obvious to everyone else. When others chase speed, play depth. When others chase visibility, build credibility. When others abandon early, stay long enough for momentum to work in your favor. Because systems reward those who remain committed long after initial excitement fades. And in a world addicted to immediacy, patience becomes a competitive edge. Chapter 8. The identity shift that changes everything. At some point, building systems stops being about tactics. It becomes about identity. You can learn strategies, you can study automation tools, you can analyze business models. But if you still see yourself primarily as someone who earns by being directed, you will unconsciously return to familiar patterns. The final shift is internal. It is the moment you stop asking, "What should I do next?" and start asking, "What am I building?" That question reshapes how you move through the world. I once met a man named Oliver who worked as an operations manager in a mid-sized logistics company. He was competent and well-respected. For years, he focused on executing instructions from senior leadership. If there was a new initiative, he implemented it. If there was a problem, he solved it. He was efficient, but he wasn't building anything that belonged to him. One day, during a strategy meeting, and a senior executive presented a 5-year roadmap for the company. As Oliver listened, something clicked. The company had a long-term vision. It had targets, milestones, structural goals. He realized something uncomfortable. He had never created a 5-year roadmap for himself. His career had direction, but not design. That realization triggered a personal shift. Instead of viewing his job as a sequence of tasks, he began treating it as a training ground. Every project became data. Every challenge became research. He studied patterns, identified recurring inefficiencies across the industry. Gradually, he started outlining an idea for a software tool that could streamline common logistics bottlenecks he had observed. He didn't rush. He didn't quit his job. He documented insights for months. Then he partnered with a developer friend and built a simple prototype. The tool wasn't revolutionary, but it addressed a specific frustration that many companies faced. And because Oliver had years of real-world exposure, his solution was grounded in reality, not theory. Within 2 years, that prototype evolved into a subscription-based platform used by several small logistics firms. The transformation did not happen because Oliver suddenly worked harder. It happened because he changed how he saw himself. He was no longer just an operations manager. He was an architect in training. Identity precedes action. If you see yourself as an employee waiting for instruction, you will optimize for compliance. If you see yourself as a builder, you will optimize for creation. This identity shift affects small decisions: how you spend free time, what you study, what problems you pay attention to, who you network with, what risks you consider acceptable. Builders think in terms of assets. They ask, can this knowledge be stored? Can this solution be reused? Can this relationship become long-term? Can this effort accumulate? They view experiences as raw materials. Salary thinking often compartmentalizes life. Work is work. Personal interests are hobbies. Conversations are casual. Builder thinking integrates everything. A casual conversation might reveal a market need. A hobby might become a niche product. A frustration might signal an opportunity. The world becomes full of inputs. Another example comes from someone unexpected, a high school teacher named Marcus, as he loved teaching history but felt financially constrained. Instead of leaving education immediately, he reframed his perspective. He stopped seeing himself solely as a teacher delivering lessons. He started seeing himself as a curriculum designer. He began developing comprehensive teaching units that combined storytelling, multimedia resources, and interactive activities. Other teachers noticed and asked for access. He refined the materials and created a subscription-based resource platform for educators. Marcus did not abandon his profession. He expanded his identity within it. The income from his platform eventually gave him flexibility, but more importantly, it gave him ownership over his expertise. When identity shifts, fear loses some power. Because you are no longer experimenting randomly, you are building intentionally. This does not eliminate uncertainty, but it provides direction. Another subtle benefit of this identity change is resilience. When a project struggles, you do not interpret it as personal failure. You see it as feedback for refinement. Builders expect iteration. They expect improvement cycles. They detach ego from outcomes. Oliver's first software prototype had multiple flaws. Users complained about interface issues. Some features were confusing. Instead of abandoning the idea, he collected feedback systematically and adjusted. His identity as a builder made adaptation natural. There is also a long-term psychological reward in this shift. When you build systems, you experience progress differently. Instead of counting hours worked, you measure structures created. Instead of measuring effort, you measure accumulation. You begin to think in layers. What did I build this year? What improved? What became more efficient? What gained traction? Each layer strengthens your position. Eventually, you look back and realize you are standing on foundations you constructed intentionally. That feeling is different from receiving a raise. It is deeper. It is ownership. The identity shift is not dramatic. It does not require public declarations or sudden exits from stable jobs. It requires quiet commitment to think differently about your role in the world. You're not limited to executing someone else's blueprint. You can draft your own. And once you accept that you're capable of designing structures that outlast your immediate effort, your decisions begin to align with that truth. You invest differently. You learn differently. You plan differently. The final step in stopping salary thinking is recognizing that you are not just a participant in economic systems. You are capable of building them. That realization changes how you see opportunity. And once your identity aligns with creation instead of dependency, the question is no longer whether you can build something lasting. It becomes what you will build next. We've covered a lot in this journey together. From recognizing the invisible ceiling of salary thinking, to learning how to see leverage in everyday work, from shifting toward value ownership, to building your first real system, from developing quiet discipline, to designing income that survives your absence, from committing to the long game, to ultimately transforming your identity into that of a builder. Each chapter pointed to one central truth. Freedom is not earned in increments of salary. Now, it is engineered through systems. We did not talk about quitting your job recklessly. We did not promise overnight wealth. We did not rely on hype. Instead, we focused on structure. We explored how repetition signals opportunity, how documentation creates independence, how consistency compounds, how patience builds durability. And most importantly, how the shift from "what do I earn" to "what am I building" changes the trajectory of your entire life. The goal was never to make you dissatisfied with honest work. The goal was to expand your perspective. A salary can be a starting point. It can provide stability. It can fund your first experiments, but it should not be the final architecture of your financial life. Systems create options. Options create power. And power, real power, is the ability to choose how you spend your time without fear that everything collapses when you step away. Now, the most important part begins. Application. Do not let this remain inspiration. Take one action. Identify one skill you already use daily. Choose one recurring problem you understand deeply. Outline one small solution you can package. Protect 1 hour this week to begin building. It does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be public immediately. It does not need to replace your income next month. It needs to exist. Momentum starts with structure. 3 months from now, you could still be thinking about building a system, or you could be refining one. A year from now, you could still be negotiating small raises, or you could be watching the first version of something you created begin to grow on its own. 5 years from now, your life could look almost identical to today, or it could be supported by layers of assets you built deliberately. The difference is not luck. It is architecture. Remember, systems are not built by extraordinary people. They are built by consistent people. By individuals who decide that their effort should accumulate. By individuals who understand that identity shapes action. You do not need permission to begin. You do not need perfect timing. You need a decision. If this message resonated with you, if it challenged you, or if it gave you clarity about what your next step should be, I genuinely appreciate you staying through this entire conversation. Your time is valuable, and the fact that you invested it in expanding your thinking means something. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reflecting. Thank you for being willing to grow. If this content helped you see your work and your future differently, share it with someone who needs that shift as well. A friend who feels stuck. A colleague who works hard but wants more control. A family member who deserves greater stability. And most importantly, start building. I'll see you in the next video.